It all comes down to a seemingly insignificant microorganism, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a yeast that was discovered by Pasteur in the 19th century and that holds the key to understanding how alcohol is made. Saccharomyces is responsible for the chemical reaction of fermentation that leads to ethanol, the most famous member of the alcohol family, the alcohol made and sold for consumption. When yeast cells come into contact with glucose, they use it as their main source of fuel. Ethanol and carbon dioxide are byproducts of this cellular digestion process. This procedure is employed in the production of all alcohol that is made for human consumption. Billions of liters of alcohol are produced per day. A wide variety of animals feed on ripe fruit, nectar, honey, and sap. Glucose can be found everywhere and is a food source for many animals. Yeast can be found in almost every habitat present in nature. It can be found on fruit and leaves and on animal fur and shells. Animals transport yeast when they move around.
Yeast was one of the first living inhabitants on our planet. It can be found everywhere, in all climates, in all latitudes, in all types of habitats.
The consequence of this is that ethanol is present in virtually every natural habitat.
Any animal that eats fruit or that consumes nectar is potentially being exposed to alcohol on a regular basis via dietary ingestion. So that would include lots of mammals, lots of birds. There are even some reptiles that eat fruit, and of course hundreds of thousands of insect species.
This finding is far from trivial. Man is a member of the animal kingdom. Observing animals can provide vital information and help us to understand the human relationship with alcohol. What is the attraction of alcoholic beverages? Is it the taste of the ethanol molecule that makes alcohol irresistible? The reaction that mice and rats have to alcohol has been studied in more depth than the reaction of any other mammal. Dr. Pier Vincenzo Piazza studies small rodents in his laboratory in Bordeaux. If we give a mouse a bottle of sugared water, then it is immediately drawn to it. If we give a mouse that has never drank alcohol a bottle that contains sugared water with 15% alcohol content, then it refuses to drink it until it's thirsty. If we give a bottle of each liquid to a mouse, then it will not be interested in the alcohol solution whilst the sugared water remains accessible. The facts are clear. In the first instance, rodents do not like the taste of alcohol, even when it's mixed with sugar. There has not been much research done on the reaction that different animals have to alcohol. In nature, Drosophila flies are the exception, and for good reason. They like alcoholic environments and are attracted to very ripe or rotting fruit, which can contain up to 2 or 3 degrees of alcohol. It's where they eat and lay eggs, and where larvae develop. Unlike mice, we can assume that this insect likes the taste of alcohol since it consumes significant quantities of it all year long.
Hey Norman. Hello. How's it going? Good. What's new?
Ulrike Heberlein has studied the relationship between fruit flies and alcohol for over 20 years in her laboratory in San Francisco.
By eye, it seems that it actually shifts the curve to the left. So it takes
What we can do in the laboratory
is we can give flies a choice to drink food which contains sugar or food that contains alcohol.
During the tests, 20 to 50 fruit flies are placed in tubes. They have had no prior contact with alcohol. The flies are so small that it's necessary to use glass straws that are less than 1 millimeter in diameter as bottles. The green solution is sugared water. The blue solution is sugared water with 15% alcohol content. Will the fruit flies be attracted to the blue alcohol solution? Given the natural transparency of their abdomens, there's no need for a breathalyzer to detect the presence of alcohol in the flies. The test result is 100% green. As with the mice, at first contact, these small flies have an aversion to alcohol. What about human beings, the eternal drinkers? Are they the exception to the rule in the animal kingdom?
If you give wine, even a Mouton Rothschild, to a 14-year-old child who has never drunk alcohol, or to a 10-year-old child, they will tell you that it's disgusting.
People are not attracted to the taste of alcohol. It is always combined with other elements that give it an aroma and a taste so that it's a pleasure to consume.
People do not drink 40% pure alcohol. An industry has developed. Wine, whiskey, Armagnac, cognac. The taste of alcohol is transformed.
Initially, most people have to force themselves to drink.
Alcohol intake, even in humans, is a learned behavior. We start drinking socially, even if we don't like the taste at first.
If alcohol doesn't taste good, but almost everyone consumes it, then this tiny molecule must have a secret power. Its power is evident in nature. Hundreds of thousands of different animal species play a role in the reproduction process. They involuntarily transport nectar and seeds. Alcohol plays a part in this process. It is present in sugar juices and evaporates in the wind. This gives off a scent that attracts animals to a food source. Whilst animals don't like the taste of alcohol at the outset, they're drawn to its odor.
People have mimicked in the laboratory plumes of ethanol emanating from a source of ethanol. And it's very clear that flies fly and steer to maintain their flight within that plume, which is really just a high concentration of ethanol odor. And they follow that to the source, and that's how they find the fruit.
German scientific researcher Frank Wiens has made amazing discoveries concerning the role of alcohol in the relationship between plants and animals. His studies take place in the Malaysian forests in Southeast Asia. It started 20 years ago when the scientists stumbled almost accidentally upon some rather unusual wild palm trees. The Bertum palm, a tree that doesn't necessarily need to be visible for its presence to be felt.
First of all, there's a very strong smell that is actually sensible from quite far apart, and that resembles the smell of a brewery.
The heady scent of fermentation comes from the flowering tops that blossom, and in all seasons. Each flowering top has approximately 1,000 brown shell-shaped flowers. They are prickly and tough. It didn't take the research very long to find the source of the odor.
The flower bud is shaped, is built, is designed like a brewing chamber.
A rich and sweet nectar accumulates inside the buds. As soon as the slightest crack appears between two petals, yeast that is found on the exterior of the bud kicks into action. An intense fermentation period starts inside each flower. It lasts for around 3 months. Carbon dioxide is produced, and this creates compression and nature's equivalent of champagne. Animals are attracted to the odor of the fermented palm nectar. The animal consumers do not have a choice. If they consume the sugary nectar for fuel, then they will also swallow large doses of alcohol.
The alcohol content can be up to 3.8%, which is within the range of a normal beer. For nectar, this is the highest alcohol content ever found.
The flowers on the Bertum palms are extremely popular. There's a constant swarm of insects around the trees. Even geckos come to the tree to consume its delicacies. The researcher makes his most fascinating discoveries during the night. As well as being surrounded by insects, the blossoming tops are the scene of a ballet composed of 7 species of nocturnal mammals. It's an extraordinary phenomenon. The researcher uses discrete infrared lighting for his nighttime observations. The first animal to visit the tree is the common tree shrew, a mammal that is active during dusk and dawn. It's then time for the night visitors to appear. As the hours pass, at least 4 species of rats and mice come to the tree. The slow loris is a primate that weighs around 500 grams and is closely related to the lemurs of Madagascar. It is the largest of the animals that regularly frequent the tree to consume the nectar. The most fascinating night visitor is the pen-tailed tree shrew. It is a small tree shrew that weighs less than 50 grams. The researcher filmed this species for the first time in its natural habitat. The pen-tailed tree shrew is a loyal customer. He spends more than 2 hours per night drinking champagne in his local bar. To verify the quantity of alcohol that is being consumed, Frank Wiens regularly conducts chemical analysis on hair taken from the animals that drink at the tree. Today, he is analyzing hair taken from a common tree shrew.
The concentration of the biomarker in the hair indicated excessive drinking. Similar concentrations have only found in very few excessive drinkers in humans.
Bertum palm regulars don't have any choice. If they want to consume nectar, then they have to drink alcohol. Frank Wiens decided to investigate the link between the production of alcohol and the presence of 7 different species of mammals. As he predicted, animals play a key role in the palm tree reproduction process. The Bertum palms produce alcoholic nectar non-stop throughout the year, and various mammals populate the trees and the surrounding area. Nectar is produced on a daily basis for 3 months before the flowering tops externalize their stamens and then produce the fruits. Mammals in the area carry pollen in their hair from flower to flower and from tree to tree. This process is one of Mother Nature's secrets. The incomparable scent of alcohol discreetly connects the animal world and the plant world.
So that's the matcha.
Modern man does not have an inbuilt desire for the taste of alcohol, and there is no scientific evidence that people are attracted to the smell of alcohol. How can we explain the global success of this molecule? What makes it so popular? The popularity of ethanol is linked to its psychotropic capacity. When consumed, it induces changes in perception, sensation, mood, and consciousness.
Oh wow, very refreshing.
The ethanol molecule passes quickly through the stomach wall, and as soon as the blood flows leads it to the brain, it affects certain receptors and modifies and boosts or decreases nerve messages, even when consumed in moderate doses. The state of intoxication caused by alcohol can be felt within minutes of consumption. What exactly does being drunk mean? Most people have their own definition of the difference between being a little tipsy and completely drunk. Scientists, however, find the term drunk far too vague a concept. Clinically speaking, the consumption of alcohol causes 4 different phases of intoxication. The first phase is disinhibition and is pleasant and enjoyable.
First of all, people experience early disinhibiting effects, then anxiolytic effects. This causes a type of social disinhibition. People tend to become more talkative and to interact more easily.
Phases 2 and 3 aren't quite as pleasant.
Then, as consumption increases, motor behavior is disrupted, as well as the ability to perform certain tasks. There is a progressive state of sedation until a person will find himself or herself in an alcoholic coma.
The fourth and final phase is better known as the hangover. What about animals? Do they get tipsy? Do they get drunk? In order to find out more, we head back to see our rodent friends at the laboratory. This time, the mouse does not have a choice. Each bottle features an alcoholic beverage. The mouse starts to drink when its thirst is greater than its instinctive aversion to alcohol. The mouse perks up immediately. It explores every corner of the glass cage with vivacity and determination. As the dosage is increased, it becomes difficult for the mouse to coordinate its movements. When it is increased even further, the mouse slips into a deep sleep. It speaks less, but a drunken mouse is remarkably similar to a drunken human. What about the minuscule fruit fly? Is it possible for a fly to get drunk?
It's remarkable. When I saw a drunk fly for the first time, I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to study.
The fruit flies are not given a choice during this experiment. This time, the alcohol is not given to them through a straw. It is pumped into the tubes in steam form. Their movements are filmed and analyzed by a computer program.
The phases of inebriation in the fruit fly are remarkably similar to what you or I or any animal would display in terms of behavior. The first reaction is that they will start becoming gradually more and more hyperactive, which is believed to be a reflection of the disinhibition that humans and other animals display when given relatively modest concentrations of alcohol. Then after a while they become uncoordinated and they bump into each other, they bump into the walls, they try to fly, they can't. And then as they get more and more alcohol, they become slowed down, they fall over, they try to get up. Essentially their motor coordination becomes very poor, and eventually they just fall asleep.
There is no doubt that all phases of human intoxication are once again represented.
I would say that all animals that have been studied for alcohol behaviors show some of these same phases. This sort of hyperactivity or disinhibition that is then followed by loss of coordination and sedation. It's universal.
The psychotropic effect of alcohol is universal. It is tempting to imagine that even animals appreciate being tipsy from time to time. After all, the initial effects of alcohol are far from unpleasant.
There's almost no real reliable observation of true drunkenness in the animal kingdom. There are anecdotal accounts of drunken parakeets, drunken monkeys, but they're very rare.
However, a study on waxwings, a migratory bird, which took place in North America in the 80s, found that they are affected by alcohol.
There is actually a really nice study showing death by alcohol in some birds called cedar waxwings, where people actually measured the blood alcohol concentration of recently deceased birds and showed very high concentrations. So these were fermenting fruits that the birds were eating, and they overdosed on alcohol. They couldn't fly, and they died. It's the only documented study of actual alcohol in the blood or in the physiological levels of alcohol that correlates with death by alcohol.
Research indicates that drunken behavior is uncommon in animals. It's rare for fruit, nectar, honey, or sap to have an alcohol content of 4 to 5%. The vast majority of these natural food sources contain less than 1% alcohol. As a result, the probability of consuming the dose required to get drunk is very low, even though some animals ingest up to 10% of their body weight of ripe fruit each day.
They don't eat continuously in one big bout the way we drink, for example, a large bottle of whiskey very quickly. It's much more evenly spread through the day.
In order for someone to become intoxicated, a certain amount of alcohol must be consumed during a short period of time. A technique that many people have honed to perfection. What about the animals that frequent the bertam palms in the Malaysian forest? The alcohol content of the nectar can reach up to 4%, but the average flower contains less than 1%. If a human consumed a large quantity of an alcoholic beverage that has this level of alcohol content, then it would cause psychoactive effects. Do the sparkling nectar aficionados end up drunk after their nightly visits to the tree? Or do they become resistant to alcohol?
None of the visitors of flowers actually show signs of inebriation or drunkenness. So they seem to be all fine. That's true for the insect visitors and also for the vertebrates.
The pen-tailed tree shrew weighs only 50 grams and is a living enigma. It spends over 2 hours every night, longer than any other animal, consuming the alcoholic nectar that constitutes the main part of its diet. If we compare this to a human, it is the equivalent of consuming 9 glasses of wine that has an alcohol content of 12% during a period of less than 10 hours each night. Does the pen-tailed tree shrew take its alcohol better than you or I?
Our data show that the pen-tailed tree shrew would be drunken every 3rd night.
Several years of observations have shown nothing. Not one tree shrew has been caught in a state of inebriation.
The finding that they have high intake but show no signs of drunkenness is linked to a higher metabolic tolerance, and that means to a more efficient alcohol detoxification.
Given its zoological position, the pen-tailed tree shrew could have passed on its alcohol resistance to humans.
The pen-tailed tree shrew is considered the least derived living mammal that represents our ancestors 55 million years ago.
Our ancestors were a variety of tree shrew that resembled the present-day pen-tailed tree shrew. Throughout evolution, they have consumed a highly alcoholic diet. Ethanol is a primary food source for the pen-tailed tree shrew, and they digest it easily. We are descendants of tens of millions of years of evolution. Pre-humans came after our ancestors, the apes. They were no longer dependent on the highly alcoholic bertam palm nectar, but they regularly consume ripe fruit, and therefore alcohol in small doses. Modern man has also lost the ability to digest large quantities of alcohol. The alcohol molecule has marked tens of millions of years of zoological evolution. Our instinctive behaviors can be traced back through time.
Why are we so intrinsically attracted to alcohol? So one possibility is that we have built into our brains this historical association between consumption of alcohol and nutritional reward.
It could be said that the most enjoyable moment to consume alcohol is as an appetizer. Humans have a rather unique relationship with alcohol. Man does not consume alcohol for nourishment. He consumes it in order to reach a state of inebriation. The revolution regarding the use of alcohol came about during a period of thousands of years, at the end of prehistory. A variety of alcoholic beverages are now available in concentrations and quantities that our ancestors 55 million years ago could have never imagined. This progression signaled the start of a new era on planet Earth. According to Patrick McGovern, an archaeologist who specializes in the origins of alcoholic beverages, humans began practicing alcoholic fermentation long before the start of civilization, in the Neolithic age.
I think that because humans and all animals are interested in alcohol, that they would have been fermenting right from the beginning. And they would have been fermenting anything they could get in their environment.
Hunter-gatherers produced a variety of wines. They did this by fermenting ripe fruit or honey.
We know that some of the plants, such as barley, rice, and so forth, were domesticated going back to 10,000 BC, right after the last ice age. And the purpose was likely to make beer.
It was not until 6,000 years before Christ, in parallel with the development of agriculture and the beginnings of civilization, that the systematic extraction of alcohol in large quantities became common. Engravings from Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Italy, and China provide evidence that this was the case. Amphorae and other pottery enabled the long-term preservation of liquids, and this meant that alcoholic beverages were available for consumption at any time of the year. These receptacles were also used to transport the beverages when necessary. This was the start of accessible alcohol consumption. However, unlike our tree shrew ancestors, we can only digest alcohol in moderate doses. Today, more than 2 billion people worldwide regularly consume alcohol. Is it considered a food source? Alcohol in low or moderate doses can be good for us.
Alcohol drunk in moderation is good for you. It's good for your cardiovascular system. It may even be good for your brain.
The beneficial effects of alcohol have been observed in many animal species, including fruit flies.
If you give them a little more alcohol, their lifespan increases. Their fecundity of the females also increases compared to no alcohol or very high levels of alcohol.
Unlike in nature, a variety of high-content alcohol is readily available and easily accessible to us. The fact that alcohol is so accessible has meant that we are subject to the negative side effects caused by the ethanol molecule, excessive consumption, and the serious issue of addiction. Unlike animals, certain people have a tendency to drink excessive amounts of alcohol and to go largely beyond the stage of feeling good. For the most part, animals do not adopt this type of behavior.
Their natural instinct is to stop consuming alcohol just before they become drunk, and they do not often reach the same state of inebriation as humans.
When considering animal alcohol consumption, we should disregard accidental ingestion that occurs with domestic animals when the taste of alcohol is masked by the taste of the beverage. Well-known vet Yves Layani and his parrot Coco celebrate Shabbat every Friday night with a small glass of port. After just a few sips, the parrot starts whistling. Be careful if you're not a veterinarian. The slightest overdose can be fatal. For humans as well as animals, excessive consumption is dangerous. Every day, the loss of vigilance, reaction time, and motor coordination is responsible for thousands of accidents worldwide. Alcohol and drunk driving is responsible for 1/4 of all recorded road accidents that result in fatalities. Alcohol is also responsible for certain psychological problems. Advanced drunkenness is often accompanied by a marked increase in aggressive behavior and is the source of many incidents or accidents at home and in social or professional environments. It is easy to imagine why animals don't drink themselves into a state of inebriation. Birds would not be able to fly and monkeys would fall from their branches.
In a natural ecosystem, it doesn't make sense that they move drunken around in their home ranges. So that would be heavily selected against, because it would just increase the risk for falling prey to another species.
A population of drunken animals would soon become extinct. But for humans, the harmful effects of alcohol do not prevent excessive casual consumption. The ethanol molecule has a dangerous consequence: addiction.
Addictions are a very big problem today, and alcoholism is the most dangerous and damaging of all the addictions.
As with nicotine, cocaine, or heroin, alcohol has the capacity to engulf its consumers and to deprive them of their freedom of choice. Alcoholism is a worldwide problem.
They can't stop, and they destroy their lives and their families and everything.
Alcoholism affects 140 million people around the world. The consequences are horrendous. Alcoholism is the source of more than 60 diseases: cirrhosis of the liver, cancer, and injury by alcohol-related accident or violence. 4% of all deaths worldwide can be attributed to alcohol. This is more than AIDS or tuberculosis. The consequences of alcohol-related problems relates annually to hundreds of billions of dollars. People who are addicted to alcohol no longer benefit from the small pleasures that moderate ingestion can provide.
The transition to addiction occurs when a person is controlled by alcohol. He or she does not use alcohol to function, but stops functioning in order to drink alcohol.
This phenomenon that we consider unique to man could also affect animals, since they too have unlimited access to alcohol. Fruit flies are used to test this theory. These flies are given unlimited quantities of one type of liquid, a sugared water solution that has a 15% alcohol content. After 5 days, the small insects are already in an advanced state of alcohol dependence. The alcoholic flies will do almost anything to access their daily ration of ethanol, including encountering painful electric shocks. During this experiment, the green tube contains sugared water and the red tube contains sugared water that has a 15% alcohol content. The researchers have added a small amount of quinine to the red tube. Under normal circumstances, the fruit fly have an aversion to quinine. Within a few minutes, all of the addict flies have turned red. In another series of observations, researchers in Ulrike Heberlein's laboratory found that alcoholic flies drink increasingly more alcohol over the course of a few days.
They drink twice their body volume of 15% ethanol, which would be the equivalent of what's in wine, in a day. Twice their volume.
This is the equivalent of a 176-pound man drinking 160 liters of wine per day.
We have monitored the levels of internal alcohol of flies that are self-administering, and we were shocked They were like severely intoxicating concentrations of alcohol.
If alcoholism affects creatures as different as man and insect, then this means that the ethanol molecule affects an area of the nervous system that they both have in common, the area that controls certain instinctive behavior. This observation allows us to understand a crucial component of human alcoholism, the difficulty in halting the addiction process.
The idea that addicts do not want to stop drinking is completely false. They want to, but they can't.
Does this mean that willpower doesn't play a part in stopping drinking?
It is not about willpower. We cannot stop something that is automatic.
Yet more than often, alcoholics are initially judged as weak and as having no willpower.
People such as myself not just think, but know that addiction is a behavioral disease similar to depression or schizophrenia. Society often defines addiction as a vice. What is a vice? What does that mean? That it is your own fault, that you can stop, and if you don't stop, then you don't have any willpower. You are sick, but also weak, so why should other people have to look after you?
For a long time, people thought that alcoholism was a personality disorder or linked to socio-cultural background. In truth, this is only half of the problem. The other half concerns genetic predisposition.
In humans, there are a variety of genes that contribute to alcoholism. The contributions of the genes is about 50% of the risk. The other 50% is the environment and everything else we cannot measure.
Considerable research has been done on animals, and the results demonstrate that genetic predisposition can lead to alcoholism. A well-known study was carried out on the vervet monkeys that live on the island of St. Kitts in the Caribbean. Groups of vervet monkeys became regulars at tourist beaches, where it was very easy to steal liquor with 15 or 20% alcohol content, and they were getting drunk in the space of a few minutes. A study of more than 600 monkeys in the 90s clearly demonstrated that they have varying reactions when given easy access to an unlimited quantity of alcohol. 15% of monkeys are naturally abstinent. They prefer sugary drinks and they avoid alcohol. 65% are occasional drinkers. They only like alcohol at low concentrations and in moderate quantities. 15% are daily heavy drinkers. They become 4 times as aggressive and are less friendly than before. The behavior of the remaining 5% of the monkeys is somewhat intriguing. They consume a large amount of alcohol during short periods of time, several times a day. They fall into a state of alcoholic sedation, or they become aggressive and antisocial. The monkeys that consume alcohol in this way do not survive more than 3 months. The percentages have no link to the different lifestyles of each individual monkey. The only plausible explanation is genetic predisposition. It's interesting to note that the percentages observed when studying monkeys and alcohol are very similar to those that occur when studying alcohol habits in humans. They're genetic cousins.
Having a drink with friends or a good meal does not mean that you are an alcoholic. It means that you are someone who voluntarily consumes alcohol. 10% of the population is addicted to alcohol. They are alcoholics.
It is thanks to studies on animals and their relationship with alcohol that the neurological functioning of alcoholism has been decrypted. It's difficult to imagine that this research could someday lead to treatments that could reduce or cure the problem of alcoholism, and yet,
what you're trying to do is essentially providing a drug that restores the balance to the brain, because the addicted brain is essentially changed in many, many ways.
Our brain has become rigid. It has lost the plasticity that enables it to switch from one behavior to another.
Who could have imagined that a study conducted on fruit flies that from a zoological point of view are very different to humans could potentially lead to a treatment for alcoholism? Ulrike Heberlein's team of scientists in San Francisco discovered that male fruit flies that have been sexually rejected by a female tend to drink more alcohol than those that are sexually satisfied. The researchers found that sexual frustration in a fly causes a reduction in the rate of the nerve transmitter neuropeptide F. It controls food regulation, sexual function, and has a calming and sedative effect. The researchers found evidence that demonstrated the part played by this neuropeptide in the males that were attracted to alcohol when they were not sexually satisfied. An equivalent regulatory nerve transmitter, neuropeptide Y, is present in human brains. The goal is to develop a drug that can control the amount of this neuropeptide and prevent alcohol addiction.
That week, for some reason, I don't know, I use the food.
Alcoholism is a very neglected disease when it comes to development of therapeutics. I feel that if we are successful in providing potential targets for therapy, this could have a huge, huge impact both in medicine and society.
Modern man is the only member of the animal kingdom who is intellectually conscious of himself and therefore of his own death. Alcohol and drugs are used to artificially soothe angst and in the search for liberation from fear, anxiety, and pain. However, the consequences are often dangerous. The alcohol molecule is certainly valuable in the natural kingdom. Man-made technological inventions have meant that the alcohol industry has developed extensively over the past 2 millennia. However, genetic evolution and humanity have not yet caught up.